Did you know white people and all other nations are going into slavery according to prophecy? It's written in Revelation 13:10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. All nations led blacks, Hispanics, and natives into slavery. But one nation is far more vile than them all. For over 400 years, millions of Africans were led into captivity. Portuguese ships cut across the Atlantic. Spanish crowns expanded. British merchants traded human lives. French plantations grew rich. Belgian kings carved up nations. Chains moved across oceans. Empires rose at the edge of a sword. History records who conquered. History records who enslaved. But prophecy records something else. In Isaiah 14, it says, "The Lord will choose his people again. They will take them captives, who captives they were. They who were oppressed will rule over their oppressors." Then comes the line most people avoid. "Prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers." Many today say, "It wasn't me, it was my ancestors." But scripture speaks of legacy, of consequences that echo forward. If God punished his own children for being disobedient, the question is, what makes you think he won't punish those who tried to destroy them?
Keep working. Not much left. Oh, keep it moving.
We must meet our quota for master.
Keep it moving, Bear. We must meet our quota for master. Can't rest yet. Stay strong, brothers.
We must meet our quota for master.
Keep it moving. We must meet our quota for master.
Hurry now.
Keep it moving. We must meet our quota for master.
Keep it moving. We must meet our quota for master. Keep it moving. We must meet our quota for master. Keep it moving. We must meet our quota for master.
If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and faith of the saints. Isaiah 14. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the stranger shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them, and bring them to their place. And the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids. And they shall take them captives, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve. Then thou shalt see and flow together, and thine feet in of the sea shall be converted unto thee, and shall come unto thee. The multitude of camels shall cover thee, the dromedaries of Midian and Ephah, all they from Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and incense, and they shall show forth the praises of the Lord. All the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered together unto thee. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister unto thee. They shall come up with acceptance on mine altar, and I will glorify the house of my glory. Who are these that fly as a cloud, and as the doves to their windows? Surely the isles shall wait for me, and the ships of Tarshish first, to bring thy sons from far, their silver and their gold with them, unto the name of the Lord thy God, and to the Holy One of Israel, because he hath glorified thee. And the sons of strangers shall build up thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. For in my wrath I smote thee, but in my favor have I had mercy on thee. Therefore thy gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day or night, that men may bring unto thee the forces of the Gentiles, and that their kings may be brought. For the nation and kingdom that will not serve thee shall perish, yea, those nations shall be utterly wasted. The glory of Lebanon shall come unto thee, the fir tree, the pine tree, together. Defy the place of my sight, place of my feet glorious. The sons also of them that afflicted thee shall come bending unto thee, and all they that despised thee shall bow themselves down at the soles of thy feet, and they shall call thee the city of the Lord, the Zion of the Holy One of Israel. Whereas thou hast been forsaken and hated, so that no man went through thee, I will make thee an eternal excellency, a joy of many generations. Thou shalt also suck the milk of the Gentiles, and shalt suck the breast of kings, and thou shalt know that I, the Lord, thy Saviour and thy Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem, and Kakadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards young brothers, and peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful lake out there pushing his word and truth and this sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful lake, the believer, the listeners who have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shah. And what I want to get into today, with this morning news and prophecy, a brawl for it all, and what we're seeing, all right, as these nations, okay, are getting ready, to go to all out war, as they get closer and closer to this new world order. All right, as we know, all right, these elite bankers, they play both sides, they have interest in both sides, they bet on both sides. So no matter the outcome of the war, they'll always have their interest in investments within both sides. Okay. So what we have to understand, let's go here, because prophecy is fully taken over. And see, the Lord is going to take this war to a place, that the elites can't control. Okay. And what we're seeing is they're rolling this thing out because they're rolling it out. They have to collapse the economy. They have to bring civil unrest. They have to persecute the prophets, and they have to make the MOTB mandatory. So the Lord got it to where the events that are happening is leading to a global reset. Okay. But the elites don't understand, all right, that they're not going to be, okay, the beneficiaries of this reset. It's going to be the children of Israel, all right, the remnant, Yahweh Shai, and the hopeful elect of Israel. That's who's going to benefit from this global reset, okay. And what we're going to continue to see is that this devil, causes things to happen, to bring forth his new world order, where he's going to activate, all right, more prophecy that's going to remove him from power. Okay. So we fully know that all these nations, are under the banner, all right, of the elite bankers. Okay. And what we also know is that these nations, all of them want, okay, a technocracy, the oligarchs of these nations, because the citizens lose. The citizens of the world lose. The only ones that benefit from what's to come, all right, is these elite banking families, all right, and these oligarchs from these different nations. okay, which are all on board with this technocracy, man. Okay. But what we have to understand amongst Esau Edom, that there's always a lot of treachery, man. As we I don't know, you brothers and sisters seen the live stream last night. We're going into he can never be satisfied, which is Esau. All right. And Esau does this every time. Okay, every time he gets to a particular point within his rulership, they fall out. Okay, so we're seeing a house divided, and these nations, everybody from the be for themselves, man. It's starting off in a friendly pushing match. You might be bumping shoulders, kind of sizing each other up. Okay, then you get the pushing, then you get the shoving harder, and then you go into full out blows, man. And then after blows, man, is killed by any means necessary, man. Okay, so this is the escalation that we're seeing on the global stage as these nations play their part within forwarding this new world order. Well, the Lord's going to cause, these tensions, all right, that already exist amongst these nations to spiral out of control. So this is the book of Proverbs 21 and 1. It says, the king's heart is in the hand of the Lord as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever he will. So it's the Lord that's steering this thing. Because say he turneth it whithersoever he will. So it's the Heavenly Father that's steering, all right, the events that's happening in the planet Earth. And there's things happening that the elite's not planning for. Okay, the Lord is causing things to happen and certain things to backfire that they're not planning for. All right. Now, this doesn't knock them all the way off their agenda. They're still able to, cause certain things to happen because they have to cause the civil unrest. They have to cause famines. They have to persecute the prophet. These things have to be. Okay. So there's certain things that are happening. All right. That this devil ain't account for. Okay. And we're gonna go into some scripture to prove it. Let's keep going down here. I just would listed a few scriptures, okay, about the mindset of the devil. All right, this is Ecclesiastes 5 and 10 saying, whoever loves money never has enough. All right, so this devil, he never has enough, and his greed, and greed comes with what? Corruption, okay, lewdness, wickedness, okay, because this man is trying to pull off a new world order that only benefit a few people on the planet Earth, man. All right, how wicked is that? Okay, here it is. He already had this current world order where only a few people benefit and the rest are pretty much just labor slaves. Well, he wants to take that up a notch, man. And this is a man that's never satisfied. All right, so you think that each individual family within these elites, you think they're satisfied with their portion of the new world order? No, these niggas want it all. All of them want it all, man. And that's why they fall out every time, because all these niggas want it all. Okay. And according to prophecy, these nations are going to do what the Lord wants these nations to do, man. Okay. Not what Esau wants them to do. Okay. It said, whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income. This too is meaningless, man. So to have a mindset like that, to never be satisfied with wealth, all right, and riches, and always want more and more and more. Well, their mindset, all right, is a mindset that's bound to crash out. Okay. So what this devil is trying to attempt with this new world order, he's bound to crash out, man. Okay, he can do nothing else but crash out. Okay, let's go here. Yep, verse the Proverbs 15 and 27. It says the greedy brings ruin to their households. Okay, so what the elites are doing, these top Edomites, what they're doing, well, they're going to bring ruin to their whole lineage, man. Because what the elites are doing is finna get their whole lineage, the ones that survived the destruction, put in captivity. Okay, a lot of their people are finna get nuked. Okay, or die horrific deaths and famines and wars. Okay, pestilence. You see, civil unrest, teeth of wild beasts. A lot of these Edomites finna get caught up in this, man. And it's because of the decision that's being made at the top, all right, by your elites. Okay, and you Edomites in America, you're finna get the worst of it, man. Okay, the Lord has you here just for special judgment. You elites that's here in America, man. You're gonna get the worst judgment on the planet based on what? Your elites being so goddamn greedy, man. Okay, It said the greedy brings ruin to their households, but the one who hates bribes will live, and that's the elect, man. Because their main bribe is going to be the sea hip. Okay, and the Lord has put a spirit, upon all right the elect to reject, okay, this bribe. Because the sea hip is nothing but a bribe, man. Esau bribing you to rebel against the Most High. Okay, so we're coming into a time, all right, where this greed is going to play against this devil, man. As the Lord is setting this devil up, all right, to lose, man. You see, and Esau in all his scheming and plotting, he's so caught up in it, but he don't understand, nigga, you finna lose. You see, this is the biggest gamble any heathen has ever made. Okay, and this is gonna be the biggest loss any heathen has ever had. Okay, Proverbs 28 and 22. It says, "He that hasted to be rich hath an evil eye." Okay, and this man is just so hell bent on becoming more powerful, man. And just getting more control. Okay, that he has such an evil eye towards everyone, man, even toward themselves, man. Okay, you have to understand it's a lot of treachery amongst, all right, these elites, man. Okay, so we're going to see these double crosses, and all right, and it's a war on resources. See, it's only so many resources, and this control system is ran off resources. We're going to show that, and it's going to start to make sense. Some of the things that we see, some of the patterns that we see, man, that there's true tension between these nations. There's a true war on these on natural resources, man, because resources, okay, because the natural resources power, okay, the control grid, okay, this control system that they want to roll out. Okay, so who has the resources has the most leverage in the control grid, man, this control system, man. Okay, so we're going to see, these fightings intensify and more nations getting involved. Okay, because all these nations and these different factions amongst these elites, they want to posture themselves, within this new world order with power, man. Okay, it says, "He that hasted to be rich have an evil eye, and consider not that poverty shall come upon him." Okay, so this devil is not considering that all this scheming and plotting, to try to implement this control system. Okay, he's not considering that he's going to be impoverished, man. He's going to have nothing. Okay, this man is finna have nothing, man. You see, just like the brother put. All right, it says Sirach 14 and 5. This is brother GMS Shapal Rakah. All right, it says, "He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good to, man?" Okay, so look at how this man treats his own people. Okay, look how this man treats the earth that he has to live on, man. All right, so what agreement is he going to honor? Okay, of course, there's these nations agree in this new world order, the technocracy, the concept of it. Okay, but do you think that Esau is going to honor, okay, these agreements? What agreement has this man honored ever? Okay, this man always breaks his own agreements. He breaks his own rules. Okay, the Constitution is gone. Okay, this whole NATO pact gone. All these nuclear treaties not to produce nuclear weapons that go this far, and intermediate weapons, all this gone, man. Everything, every agreement that this man has ever broken is gone. I mean, has ever made up is gone. Okay, the gloves are coming off, man. And this war, all right, continues to escalate. Which right now it's in the ceasefire. All right, but when these nations get back to when these nations get, every time they do a ceasefire and get back to fighting, it's more intense. Because you look at the timeline, it went from, Iran will strike every now and then at the small hats, they will kill certain scientists, or they'll kill, they'll strike not the American, but the Iranian, the embassy in a certain country. And Iran will, they'll do a strike every now and then. They'll throw a few missiles. Okay. And then eventually they locked up into what? A 12-day war. Okay. Then there was a ceasefire. In the 12-day war, they was getting at each other. They was going back and forth. Okay. And then what? You had this latest war that lasted about 40 days, you know, 40 days or so, give or take, and it was way more intense. It became a regional war, okay, immediately. And then you had the Strait of Hormuz get closed. So now you have this ceasefire. When they lock up again, it's going to be more intense. More nations going to be directly involved, man. You know? So you're going to have, you know, these ceasefire, these breaks, okay? And there's going to come a particular ceasefire, man, okay? And these doubles, I mean, in these nations, you know, they're going to separate. And once they lock up, man, there ain't going to be no more separate. Okay. So with this ceasefire that we have on now, it's just a pause on the war. Okay. Things can't go back to how they were before February 28th. Okay. It's been a lot done in the 40 days, man. There's been a lot of escalation, and it's just frozen right there at this particular escalation. But when they hit the play button on this war again, it's going to continue to escalate on that same trajectory that it was already on. They're not starting over from nothing. No, they're going to continue that same escalation that they was on, all right, before they pause this war, man. Okay. So let's get a few. I got a few videos I want to get into. Okay. I'm gonna finish this off. It says, "He that is evil to himself, to whom will he be good?" So how can this man be good to anybody when he's not good to himself? Look at the decision that this man makes. So what agreement is he gonna honor? This man trying to undermine the Most High. So you think he's not gonna? You think one elite family ain't gonna try to undermine another elite family? Okay, if they have the balls, all right, to try to undermine the Most High, you think they ain't gonna undermine each other, man? Okay, and this war gonna go out of control. Okay, so if he's evil to himself, to whom will he be good? Who can he be good to? Okay, what deal can he honor? None. Okay, it said he shall not take pleasure in his goods. Okay, so let's go here. I got a couple videos. Let's go here first. All right, because what we have to understand, you know, this is a resource grab. All right, because the leverage of this new world order, all right, is energy. All right, because these data centers, all right, the digital public infrastructure, it requires a lot of energy, man. Okay, so who controls the energy? Control this new system. Okay, so what we're seeing is these devils behind the scenes are warring over these over this energy, man. Okay, what America wanted to do, this was an energy grab. Iran would have been a big win, okay, for the oligarchs behind America for an energy grab, man. You know, and it would have shut off, okay, energy to, you know, Europe, China, and these South Pacific Asian nations. Okay, now in the midst of this, they still want a global reset, because remember, he can do a global reset in many ways. He can just the grid is an on and off switch. Like we turn on the lights. Okay, this devil can turn the grid off with an on off switch. The grid off for you know, 2 weeks, you know, a month, man. All right, could be catastrophic, man. Mass death. Okay, you see, mass violence. All right, supply chains completely stopped, man. So it's a lot of ways that this devil, you know, can shut down the economy, man. Or the elites can just, you know, call in their tab with America and say, well, look, we're not doing any more loans. We want to you know, we want to handle their debt. Okay, and everything will crash, because when the dollar crashes, everything crashes, man. Okay. So these devils, you see some infighting, you know, within that, they still have to, you know, shut down this system, bring chaos, bring desperation, you know, make people beg for a solution, which is going to be the MOTB, you know. So we already know that that's they play, you know, within the midst of this fighting over resources, man. So let's play this.
Something shifted this week in the Iran standoff And it didn't come from Washington or Tel Aviv. It came from Beijing. China has just drawn a line in the sand, and the message to the United States couldn't be clearer. Push further, and there will be consequences you aren't prepared for. Welcome to Prime Update, where you get clear, reliable, and up-to-date coverage of global events. For months, the conflict surrounding Iran has been building quietly beneath the surface of global headlines. Sanctions, airstrikes, blocked shipping lanes, escalating rhetoric. The United States and Israel have maintained consistent pressure on Tehran, military, economic, and diplomatic. And for a while, the world watched without directly intervening. That has now changed. China, the world's second largest economy and Iran's most significant trading partner, has formally entered the conversation, not with troops, not with missiles, but with something potentially more powerful in today's world, an economic ultimatum and a four-point diplomatic framework. This is no longer a bilateral standoff. This is a global power contest, unfolding in real time. The trigger: Washington continued its pattern of economic pressure, sanctions, trade restrictions, and what Beijing describes as unlawful interference in international waters. For China, these weren't abstract policy disagreements. They were direct threats to energy supply chains, trade routes, and long-term strategic positioning. Cause: U.S. policy tightened its grip on Iran, including moves that could disrupt key shipping corridors in the Persian Gulf. Effect: China publicly warned the United States that further sanctions would be met with a proportional economic response, with direct implications for American markets and consumers. The message was pointed. Officials signaled that the U.S. economy would bear real costs. Consequence: Beijing didn't stop at warnings. It released a structured four-point framework, a diplomatic blueprint for ending the conflict, and circulated it to Gulf nations and the broader international community. This is China positioning itself not just as Iran's protector, but as a legitimate global mediator. That's a significant escalation in its foreign policy ambition. The 4 points. Decoded. These aren't vague platitudes. Each point carries strategic weight. Point 1, peaceful coexistence. Iran continues to exist as a sovereign state. Regime change, whether through military force, internal destabilization, or external interference, is off the table. This is a direct message to both Washington and Tel Aviv. Point 2, national sovereignty. Sustained military strikes or covert operations inside Iran violate international norms. China is stating plainly that this pattern cannot continue without consequence. Point 3, rule of law. This is where it gets economically significant. China argues that blockading international shipping lanes is illegal under international law. Iran, like nations controlling other major waterways, has the right to regulate transit through its waters. Beijing drew explicit comparisons to the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal, both recognized globally as legitimate toll corridors. China also called out what it frames as a double standard. Nations like the US and Israel maintain nuclear capabilities without international scrutiny, while Iran faces constant pressure over its program. Point 4, development and shared security, perhaps the most forward-looking element. China is explicitly signaling that it wants a seat at the global security table, not just in Asia, but everywhere. Reducing American unilateral dominance isn't a side effect of this policy. It's the goal. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. China doesn't intervene without calculation. Every diplomatic move Beijing makes serves a layered strategic interest. First, energy security. China is Iran's largest oil buyer. Any disruption to Iranian exports directly affects Chinese industry and economic planning. When oil prices swung from around $65 to over $100 per barrel in a matter of weeks, Beijing felt that volatility immediately. Second, trade route protection. The Persian Gulf isn't just Iran's backyard. It's a critical artery for global commerce. China needs those lanes open. Period. Third, geopolitical positioning. The United States has spent decades as the world's primary security guarantor. China is now quietly, methodically building an alternative framework. This 4 points plan isn't just about Iran. It's about demonstrating to the global south that Beijing can offer stability without regime change as a precondition. And there's a fourth dimension that rarely gets discussed openly: dollar dominance. Every time.
So what you have, because like I say the elites, they fund both sides. They finance, China. All right. China, the elites have heavily invested into China. All right. That's why China has come so far. And the reason why they're able to, like you go into China, they already have a social credit, all right, a social credit score system. Okay. A surveillance state, because China doesn't have the rights. All right. They don't have to fight, okay, all the rights of Chinese government. because the Chinese government, the Chinese citizen doesn't have the rights of the American citizen. Okay, India is tapped into the digital infrastructure. Okay, and it's easy to roll out in India because they don't have the rights that American citizens have. Okay, even Russia is farther along in the digital infrastructure, and that's majority of the population of the world. Between Africa, which you have 54 countries in Africa, all of them are down with the digital infrastructure. More of these African nations are beginning to do business with Russia and China. You see, the elites are playing, this game of good cop, bad cop with America. America being their bad cop, all right, but Russia and China being the good cop. Well, both lanes, all right, both avenues lead to a new world order, okay? But in the midst of this, you have real time tension because there's only a limited amount of resources, okay? There's only a limited amount of resources to power this new world order infrastructure, okay? And we're going to get into that, okay? So if these nations are going digital and setting up this infrastructure, oil becomes more critical and vital to run, all right, these nations, man. Okay. And you have it to where it's like musical chairs. There's only so many chairs, man. So these nations walk around these chairs, and what happened when the music stops and they sit down? Well, it's a fight for a chair. Okay. So both of these blocks, the bricks, okay, and this old American system, they all lead into, okay, a one world government. Okay. So like I said, you have America playing the bad cop, China and Russia playing the good cop. Okay. And Iran, they're playing the part of these, these liberators, okay, from these these smaller nations. Okay. But they're all being segued into this technocracy, man. Okay. But within this technocracy, all right, there's going to be a struggle for power and leverage, man. Okay. And the leverage of these resources. Okay. So let's play this a little more.
Washington uses financial sanctions as a weapon, it quietly accelerates the search for alternatives. China is watching that process, and in many ways, encouraging it. Russia, meanwhile, has also called for an immediate ceasefire and a return to negotiations. When both Beijing and Moscow are aligned on a diplomatic outcome, that's not coincidence, that's coordinated strategic pressure. The numbers behind this conflict are staggering, and they're not staying in the Middle East. Iran has reported infrastructure damage exceeding $270 billion. Power plants, hospitals, schools, and civilian facilities. These aren't abstract statistics. That's a generation of development erased. Gulf nations, including Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Kuwait, are experiencing serious economic spillover. Tourism is down. Airline routes have been disrupted. Real estate investment has cooled. Tehran has begun formally demanding compensation from these states, accusing them of facilitating US and Israeli operations. The IMF and World Bank have both raised alarms. Global oil supply disruptions at this scale don't stay regional. They ripple through fuel costs, food prices, and inflation in London, New York, Toronto, and every city in between. And there's a human exhaustion element now entering the picture. Polling inside Israel, a society that has sustained this conflict, shows that public support for continued military operations is declining. People are tired. The appetite for war is eroding even among those closest to it. Iran has offered to suspend nuclear enrichment activities for 5 years, a notable concession, especially given the United States had previously demanded a 20-year freeze. And U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has publicly indicated that the current administration is actively looking for a diplomatic exit ramp. That tells you something important. Even Washington is feeling the pressure to step back. Here's the strategic reality as it stands today. China has fundamentally altered the geometry of this conflict. What began as a US-Iran standoff is now a proxy contest between two competing visions of global order, with one centered on American-led institutions, the other on a multipolar framework that China is actively constructing. The next few weeks will determine whether back-channel diplomacy can hold, or whether one miscalculation sends this crisis past the point of no return. Talks are resuming, signals are being sent, but signals can be misread. And in a conflict this volatile, the margin for error is dangerously thin. This isn't just a Middle East story. It's a story about who gets to set the rules of the international system and whether those rules still hold. Do you think China's 4-point frame?
Yeah, man, who gets to set the rules for this new international system? Okay, and that's when this war, all right, is going to escalate to another level. Okay, because they're all working, towards this one agenda, which is a technocracy. Okay, well, there's going to be a fight within that. There's going to be a war. Okay, this war, this fighting is going to continue to escalate for control of this new system, man. Who's going to set the rules for this new system? Okay, and that's going to be those who have what? The energy, who has control of the energy, man. Okay, so that's why you see these certain nations, Venezuela and, all right, Iran. You see these nations rich in resources and mainly energy. Okay, we're seeing what these empires, begin to do a grab. Okay, now let's just go here real quick. All right, so let's go into oil consuming, top oil consumption by country. Okay, so when you go here and you look at the top oil consuming countries, and what do you have at the top? Okay, and it started to and it makes these conflicts make more sense. You have who? America and the United States. Okay, far ahead of everyone else. You see, America, which is almost a 1/5 of the world's energy consumption. Okay, and China right behind it with 15%. So I say you have, and this was 2024, it's up a little bit since then. America right at 20% and China right at 16%. So that's 36% of the world's oil consumption between two nations. Okay, and that's why you see United States and China, it's like their names are mentioned together all the time, because they both need a lot of energy. Okay, what America did to Venezuela was to cut China off from energy. Okay, and what they wanted to do in Iran was a death blow to China. Okay, for energy, man. You see, because these nations want to go into this new world order, okay, with leverage, man. Okay, so you have the rest of these nations, everyone else is below, you know, um, 6 million barrels a day. Everyone else is below that. All right, even in Russia to be so big, okay, it only uses, it uses under 4 million barrels a day, right at 3.7 million barrels per day. Now, when you go from, all right, these nations that use, all right, these top nations, South Korea, Japan, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, Russia, okay, Canada, Germany, okay, when you go into here, so let's ask this question real quick. All right, let's ask this question. So now let's look at the most digital, all right, nations in the world. Okay, let's go to the most digital nations in the world. So you seen oil consumption was America and China. Okay, so now let's relate this to, let's ask it this, the most digital economies in the world. Okay, which means they have digital infrastructure. Okay, it says the United States and China, you see that, are the world's leading digital economies, dominating in market value. So you have America and China, okay, the two biggest oil consumers, okay, but then what? They're the two most digital economies, all right, because this digital infrastructure requires a lot of energy. Okay, so these nations, all right, they're all under the banner of the bankers and pushing to a new world order. Okay, but there's limited amount of resources. So where you're going to start to see these nations, begin to brawl for it all more and more. Okay, these moves that's being made that's causing these conflicts and war. These are energy grabs. Okay, why you think that they're talking about building data centers in space? Because they know they only have a limited amount of energy. Okay, in the earth. They're talking about building data centers underwater to help with the cooling because they have limited resources in the earth, man. You know, so we used to be able to follow the money, but if you follow the money only going to take you to Bill Gates and Witkoff and Kushner, Okay, now we got to follow the resources. When you follow the resources, then these things start to make a little more sense. Okay, it said other top players include, remember, Japan, Germany, UK, and South Korea. So the more digital infrastructure these nations get, the more energy that's required. Okay, so you look at all these top 10 energy consuming nations, they're all in the top 10, okay, of the most digital infrastructure. Okay, well, lets you know it takes energy to run these infrastructures. Okay, so the nation that has the most energy, the oligarchs, these elite families that have control over the most energy, they're going to control, all right, the rules for this new system. Okay, the winners of World War One, all right, the nations that won World War One. Okay, what happened? They set the rules going forward. Okay, after the war, World War Two. Okay, what happened after World War II? The Bretton Woods Agreement. That was the agreement of how the financial system will work. Okay, and there and what nations? Okay, let's answer this real quick. What nations were at the Bretton Woods Agreement? Okay, what nations were represented? All right, were represented at Britain. Okay, so when you go into the Bretton Woods Conference, July 1st through 22nd, 1944, was attended by delegates from 44 allied or associated nations. Everybody wasn't there. Only the nation that was with the winning side, which was America and Britain. Okay, Russia didn't have anyone at the Bretton Woods Agreement. They wasn't. Germany. Okay, and these other nations that was on the side with the what you call, because you had the Allies and then you had the other side. I forgot the other side of World War II. Brother can post it for me. It said the conference focused on creating post World War II financial stability, with the U.S. and UK playing leading roles. The attendees were primarily tasked with establishing the International Money Fund, the elite bankers, and the World Bank. Okay, so the bankers side with both sides. So whoever wins, okay, that's who wins the pot, okay, of the bank. All right, and those are the nations of fashions that's able to set the rules for the new system. Okay, World War One, World War Two, the winning side set the terms for the new system. Okay, so you're going to see, even though both sides, all right, are all fighting for the same system, well, who's going to set the rules in that system? Okay, and who sets the rules is the one that control the resources. Okay, that's why the Strait of Hormuz is a major component in these nations. All these nations being drawn into this war, man, because no one wants to be on the outside looking in. Because if you're a nation that's on the outside looking in, it's gonna be bad for you, man. Okay, you're gonna get treated, all right, like a stepchild, man. Okay, so it says, uh, who was in there? It says Americas. It says United States, Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Chile, Bolivia, Colombia, Costa Rica. So you see all these, these North, Central, South American nations were there. United Kingdom, okay, for Europe, France, all right, uh, Czechoslovakia, okay, and it says Greece, Iceland, and these are all those 10 horn nations, okay, the USSR. So Russia was there, okay, but what happened, man? They cut Russia out the deal, okay. It says China, India, you see, Iran is pre-independence, you see, Egypt, Ethiopia, Libya, Union, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand. So you had these nations that was there at this Bretton Woods Agreement. Okay. But now, as they're getting ready to go into another reset, all right, they're fighting for who's going to be at the seat at this table of this technocracy, man. Okay. And all these nations and these factions, you know, these oligarchs, these elites, all right, they want to have control over these resources, man. Okay. So, yeah, the Axis powers, you have to water. Yeah, the Axis power with the water, brother. Yep. So let's go back. I got another video I want to get into real quick. You know, I'm just looking at these things and I'm like, man, this makes sense. Okay. So let's go. Let's see. So let's go here. He's gonna go a little deeper into it.
Last 24 hours, the entire game has. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are standing at a turning point in world history. Over the last 24 hours, the entire game has changed. The United States and Iran were already locked in a terrifying standoff. President Donald Trump has officially ordered the United States Navy to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. He sent the most expensive warships in the world into a narrow waterway to choke off Iran. The mainstream media is cheering. They are calling it a strong move. They're saying America is finally putting its foot down. But they are completely missing the real story. The real story did not come from Washington. It did not even come from Tehran. The real story came from Beijing. China has just issued a red-hot warning to the United States. And the message is very simple, but very terrifying. They basically said, if you touch Iran, you are dealing with us. China has announced its full unconditional support for Iran in this conflict. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what this means in simple, easy to understand language. I will explain why China is getting involved, what they are actually going to do, and why this American blockade is about to backfire in ways nobody in the White House ever predicted. To understand why this is happening, we first need to look at the map. We need to talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Imagine a tiny, narrow doorway. Now imagine that 20% of the world's oil has to squeeze through that one single doorway every single day. That is the Strait of Hormuz. It is a thin stretch of water connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. On one side, you have the Arab states. On the other side, you have Iran. Iran controls the high ground. They control the mountains looking down on this water. For decades, the United States Navy has patrolled this area. They did this to protect the oil tankers. But now President Trump has decided to use the Navy not to protect the water, but to close the doorway. The goal is to starve Iran. The goal is to stop them from selling a single drop of oil, crashing their economy, and forcing them to surrender. On paper, to a politician, this sounds like a great plan. You use your big ships to block the small doorway. But this is where the plan falls apart, and this is where China enters the picture. Why does China care so much about a waterway thousands of miles away from Beijing? The answer is energy. China is the manufacturing engine of the world. They make everything. The lights on in cities with tens of millions of people, they need oil, and they need a lot of it. China is the biggest buyer of Iranian oil in the world. For years, while the United States was putting sanctions on Iran, China was quietly buying Iranian oil at a discount. They built a massive partnership. A few years ago, China and Iran signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement. This was a massive deal worth hundreds of billions of dollars. China promised to invest in Iranian roads, bridges, ports, and technology. In exchange, Iran promised a steady, secure supply of oil to China. So, when President Trump parks American warships in the Strait of Hormuz and says nobody can buy Iranian oil, he is not just attacking Iran. He is directly attacking China's energy supply. He is threatening to turn off the lights in Beijing, and China will simply not allow that to happen. The Chinese leadership looks at the United States and sees a country that is acting recklessly. They see an empire that is trying to use bullying tactics to maintain control. Beijing's red hot warning is a clear signal that the days of America telling the rest of the world who they can and cannot trade with are officially over. But what does China mean when they say they give full support to Iran? Let us be very clear. This does not mean China is going to sail its own aircraft carriers into the Middle East to shoot at American ships. China is much smarter than that. They play the long game. They play a game of strategy, not emotion. Full support means something much more dangerous to the United States Navy. It means technology, it means money, and it means eyes in the sky. Let us start with the eyes in the sky. Iran has a very capable military, but they have always struggled with long-range satellite tracking. To hit a moving target like an American destroyer, you need to know exactly where it is at all times. The United States has always had an advantage here because of their massive satellite network. But China has its own satellite network now. It is called Beidou. It is just as good and in some ways better than the American GPS system. When China says full support, it means they're opening up their satellite data to the Iranian military. Suddenly, the American warships cannot hide. Iran will know exactly where every single American ship is located in real time. The element of surprise is completely gone. China is effectively handing Iran the targeting coordinates. Next, let us talk about the weapons themselves. For years, Iran has been building massive numbers of cheap disposable drones and missiles. They realized they could not afford to build billion-dollar ships like America, so they built $20,000 flying bombs instead. The United States Navy relies on incredibly expensive defense systems to shoot these drones down. It is like using $1 million Patriot missile to shoot down a flying lawnmower. But where does Iran get the parts for all these drones? They get the microchips, the engines, and the sensors from China. When the United States sets up a blockade, China will ensure that the supply chain over land and through friendly airspace remains wide open. Iran will not run out of ammunition. China will keep the factories humming. Every time the United States shoots down a swarm of drones, Iran will have 100 more ready to launch the next morning, paid for and supply the Chinese supply chain. Then there is the cyber warfare aspect. Wars are no longer just fought with bullets and bombs. They are fought on computer screens. American ships are basically floating computers. They rely on complex networks to communicate, to guide their weapons, and to defend themselves. China has one of the most sophisticated cyber warfare armies on the planet. Full support means Chinese hackers will be working overtime to blind the American ships. They will try to jam the American radars. They will flood the American communication channels with static and fake signals. Imagine being an American sailor on a ship in the middle of the night. Suddenly your radar screens go blank, your radios stop working, and you cannot talk to the ship next to you. And at that exact moment, a swarm of Iranian drones comes over the horizon. That is the kind of support China is providing. They are not pulling the trigger, but they are turning off the lights in the room so Iran can strike in the dark. Now, let us zoom out.
And see, what we have to understand, this is very frustrating to American military. And they know China is helping, and they know Russia is helping. So what's going to happen, man? What's going to happen, man? America is going to get, they're going to eventually do something directly to China. Now, they're playing these energy games with China, okay? But these energy games are going to go to, all right, what they call kinetic war, okay, with Russia and China. You see? So what we're seeing now, is these back and forth, and these nations are at war with each other, okay? Not directly, but indirectly. Now, Iran and America, they're directly at war with each other, okay? But it's going to go from just being, all right, Iran and America directly in war to Iran, America, and China, then Russia directly at war, okay? Then India, then North Korea, then Pakistan, okay? And then, eventually it's going to be a world war, okay? Where you're going to have a war, all right, on every continent, man. There's going to be war on almost every continent, man. You see, there's going to be a war front. All right, it's going to be the same war fought on different fronts. Okay, this thing is going to continue to just open up. All right. And it's all centered around what this energy, man. Because China got serious about this thing when their energy was at stake. Okay. Their energy was at stake. You see? Because this is the energy that fuels their nation. Okay. Without energy, you lose your position in this new world order. You don't get, all right, a dominant seat at the table. And these nations have seen America's authority of being the superpower. And these nations, they want that type of authority, man. And they're tired of being pushed around by America. So we know phase one of the treachery is that these nations are going to block America out the map. They look at America as old, washed up, and now they see, that them working together, they got this nigga, man. Okay, they see that, okay, if we start to put our resources together, and right, we can deal with the whore, we can deal with the hammer of the earth, you know. And what we're seeing with Iran is just a precedent being said that we got this nigga, man. So you best believe these nations are in the background, plotting, okay, on their entry into this war, man, and taking down the whore, because the America is looked at as a problem, like she's in the way of everybody really prospering. That's the thinking of these nations. Like we really can be on if we get this whore. This whore, because remember, America consumes 20% of the world's energy daily, man. Okay, daily. America itself consumes 20% of the energy, man. So what you think they're thinking about? Nigga, we can, okay, take out America, and then we can split that amongst, So yeah, man, you're gonna see, all right, this conflict just continue to intensify, man. It's gonna go from these nations helping Iran in the background. Iran is just a doorway for all these other nations to pour into this war. Okay, Iran is just a door, all right, that these nations are gonna come through and enter this war. Okay, so let's play this a little more.
Out and look at the money. This is perhaps the most important part of the entire situation. For almost 80 years, the global economy has run on one simple rule. If you want to buy oil anywhere in the world, you have to use United States dollars. This is called the petrodollar system. It is the real reason America is so powerful, because everyone needs dollars to buy energy. America can print as much money as it wants to fund its military and its government. But China and Iran have been working for years to break this system. They do not want to use the dollar anymore. They want to use the Chinese currency, the yuan. When President Trump declared this blockade, he accidentally sped up the destruction of the petrodollar. Iran was already selling oil to China in Chinese yuan. Now, China will step up and say to the rest of the world, if you want oil, do not worry about the American blockade. We will handle the banking. We will use our own financial system completely separate from the Western banks. We will bypass the American sanctions completely. By forcing this conflict, the United States is essentially forcing the world to choose a side. And a lot of countries in the global south, countries in Africa, South America, and Asia are looking at China and saying, we want to be on that side. They are tired of being bullied by American financial sanctions. China's full support for Iran is actually a giant advertisement for the new financial world order. They are proving that you can survive and even thrive without the United States dollar. So what does this mean for the American blockade? It means the blockade is a trap. It is a massive historic mistake. The United States sent its most precious military assets into a narrow hallway where they cannot maneuver. They are sitting ducks. They thought they were just fighting Iran, a country they believed they could easily crush with economic pressure. But they walked right into a brick wall built by Beijing. The United States cannot win a war of attrition against an enemy that has unlimited funding and unlimited technological support from the largest manufacturing power on earth. Let us look at it from the perspective of an everyday citizen. What does this mean for the common viewer watching this at home? If you live in the United States or Europe, this is terrible news for your wallet, because the Strait of Hormuz is a war zone. We are talking about prices at the gas pump that we have never seen before. When the price of oil goes up, the price of everything goes up. The cost to deliver groceries to your local supermarket goes up. the cost to manufacture basic goods goes up. Inflation, which is already a problem, will become a massive crisis. The American consumer is going to pay the ultimate price for this geopolitical gamble. The politicians in Washington will tell you that this is about freedom and democracy. They will tell you that they have to stand up to bad actors. But the reality is much simpler and much colder. The reality is about power and money. The United States is trying.
Yeah, and power and energy, and see, Trump, he wants to tank the dollar anyway, because Trump was put in office to, catch America up, within this new world order, because America has to be caught up, and see, the thing about America has to go through a great demolition first, America has to go through a great collapse. So the dollar has to completely fall, okay? Because these other nations, they're further along, okay, with the New World Order agenda. All right, like I say, China, all they had to do is implement the CHIP. They already have all the infrastructure. Okay, America, you got to get rid of certain laws, certain norms. It has to be, great unrest. It has to be, drastic. Okay, something drastic has to happen in America to catch them up. Okay, and that's what Trump was tasked to do. So as the American military, see, the American military and the American citizens, okay, are completely different. The American military is not meant to protect the citizen. Okay, it's not meant to, the military doesn't wage war, okay, to benefit the citizens. The military, all right, is sent on assignments by the elites. Okay, the elites that run America, okay, to go, the elites that run America sends American military on assignments for them. They was going to get their oil. It had nothing to do, okay, with American citizens. What they got for the American citizens is to bring suffering, okay, is to bring desperation, is to crash the dollar, okay. They're doing that intentionally, man, while they have the American military on other assignments, okay, that deal with the interests of these elites, okay. American military was sent to Venezuela for the interests of the elites. Everywhere they go, they're sent. Iraq, Afghanistan is all for the interests of the elites, okay. The American citizens and the American military are two different functioning entities, man, okay. The American military does not benefit the American citizens at all. It makes it worse. Okay, it makes the American citizens' life worse, man. Okay, but it serves the interests of the elites. Okay, so let's play a little more.
Trying to hold on to a world where they are the only boss. China is saying that world is gone. The balance of power has shifted. The warning from Beijing, if you touch, is not a bluff. It is a statement of fact. China does not issue warnings like this unless they have already calculated all the odds and prepared all their moves. They have run the simulations. They know exactly how fragile the American economy is right now. They know the American public does not have the stomach for a long, expensive, bloody war in the Middle East that doubles their cost of living. President Trump's blockade is essentially a game of chicken. He is driving a car straight at Iran, expecting them to swerve out of the way. But China just bolted a massive steel plow to the front of Iran's car and filled the trunk with concrete. If the United States does not back down, there will be a collision. And in that collision, the United States Navy will suffer losses it has not seen since the Second World War. This is the harsh truth of predictive history. Empires fall not because they are weak, but because they become arrogant. They try to apply old solutions to new problems. The American military is designed to fight big, spectacular battles on the open ocean. It is not designed to sit in a bathtub while being swarmed by thousands of cheap, smart drones guided by Chinese satellites. We are watching the end of an era. The unipolar world, where America made all the rules, is officially dead. We are now in a multipolar world. China and Russia have been building a parallel system for years, waiting for the United States to make a fatal mistake. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is that mistake. It is the moment the American empire overextended itself so far that it cannot pull back. In the coming days and weeks, you are going to hear a lot of noise on the news. You are going to hear about emergency meetings at the United Nations. You are going to hear threats from politicians, but ignore the noise. Keep your eyes on the reality of the situation. The reality is that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. The reality is that China is feeding Iran all the data, money, and parts they need to keep it closed. And the reality is that the United States has no realistic way to open it without starting a global conflict that they cannot afford to fight. This is the perfect trap. The United States walked in, locked the door behind themselves, and handed the key to Beijing. As a viewer, you need to prepare yourself.
Yeah, man. And the Lord set that trap. You know, the brother want to post that what's that what we always get, Jeremiah 50, is it 50 verses let's see, 22 through 25. If a brother want to post that, you know. And I was looking at some more things too, but going back to another point he made, you see that, like he said, the American military was built, you know, to fight these big spectacular wars. Okay, going back to World War II. You see, if people still fought, if these nations were still trying to fight wars, all right, like World War II, they'd be obliterated. Like if you put American Navy in the water and you put any other Navy against it, the American military would obliterate it. Okay. If you put American Air Force in the air, okay, and you put another nation's Air Force in the air with it, it'll get obliterated. Okay. But nations not fighting like that anymore. You see, this modern warfare is completely different. And all these nations have modified their military, okay, to exploit America's weakness. And this is what we're seeing happening, man. Okay? Because America, if you fight, all right, according to the way that the American military was built to fight, you'll be destroyed. Okay? And you'll be over in the weekend. Okay? But these nations are not coming out and fighting America like that, man. Okay? They are drawing America in, okay, until these long drawn out, you know, these hit and run, you know, strategy, you know, type wars. And American military not built for that, man. America's military is built for shock and awe. Okay. And if you can withstand the shock and awe of America's military might, okay, and continue to strike back, American military ain't built for that, man. Okay. And these nations, all right, have figured that out and they're exploiting it. Okay. So you give Iranian military, Chinese and Russia intelligence, okay, and also Chinese manufacturing, because that's another thing. American manufacturing is trash. Okay, they can't keep up. All right, no long war because their manufacturing doesn't support a long war. Okay, you have Iran able to make thousands of drones a day. China is able to make thousands of drones a day and continue to supply the war effort. America doesn't have that type of manufacturing to continue to supply the war effort. That's why they have to go in so hard at the beginning to destroy a nation's ability to respond, which gives them air superiority to where they're just able to fly over you and just turn you to a parking lot, man. Okay, get you to the table and make a deal to where now they got all your resources. They put their government, they put their puppet government in, okay, and they run their nation through the puppet government. You see, but it didn't work like that with Iran. That's what they attempted to do. Okay, so now what we're seeing, all right, is these nations, you know, they're getting into these conflicts about this energy, man, because this energy is limited. Okay, and America walked right into the trap. You know, they were so successful with Venezuela, it was a walk in the park. You know, and they took that momentum over there to Iran, and they walked right into a trap, man. You know, and this is how we got to this moment. You see, and real quick, let's read this. This the brother Amar Kabal, Jeremiah 50 and 22. It says, "A sound of battles in the land, and of a great destruction. How was the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How was Babylon become a desolation among the nations, man?" You know, so the scriptures, the prophecy asks a question: how is Babylon, the hammer of the earth, cut asunder? Okay, how is it? How Babylon has become a desolation among the nations, man? Because of prophecy. This is all the will of the Lord. Okay, what we're seeing is the will of the Lord take place, okay, above the agenda of the elites. Okay, the will of the Lord is going to void out the agenda of the elites. And just see the will of the Lord begin to take more and more precedence of what the elites trying to do. Okay, this Mark of Ball, Jeremiah 15:24 says, I have laid a snare for thee, and thou art also taken, O Babylon, and thou was not aware. Thou art found and also caught because thou hast striven against the Lord, man. And this is a punishment. We got to remember, the Lord is getting ready to punish the nations of the earth, and Babylon gonna get it the worst, because all these nations are gonna be punished, because this war is gonna drastically affect all these nations, man. Okay, then Yahweh Shai is coming back with that final judgment, man. Okay, but the nation that we're seeing isolated is America, man, because the Lord wants to make a point, a major example with America, man. Okay, the Lord wants to embarrass America, man, and the Lord calls America to be blind with pride and walk right into this trap. Okay, you know, the least sicked America on Iran, and this shit backfired, man. Okay, and like I say, you have China and Russia, these other nations, they're down with this new world order, man. Okay, but who's going to set the rules? Okay, because these nations don't agree. Even I just looked something else up I want to go into. It says verse 25, because this is what it's going to ultimately lead to. Verse 25, it said the Lord have opened up his armory, which is this nuclear arsenal that's going to be opened up. Okay, when the devil makes this MOTB mandatory, and the Lord is going to eventually open up that nuclear arsenal, his armory. Okay, and have both. It says they have brought forth the weapons of his indignation. For this is the work of the Lord of hosts. For this is the work of the Lord power of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. Okay, which is America, man. We're just gonna turn this place to a desert. Now, real quick, I had just looked it up, because we went to who was at the Bretton Woods Agreement. All right, I looked up what nations were not represented. Okay, so you go here, it says the 1944 Bretton Woods Conference consists of 45 allied nations, primarily excluding Axis powers: Germany, Japan, Italy, okay, Switzerland, Sweden, Spain. Okay, now something interesting says while the USSR sent delegates, it ultimately did not ratify the agreements, making it a key non-member. So the USSR, they didn't ratify the agreement. They didn't agree with that deal. Okay, and you see why right after World War II, when you have a Cold War between America and Russia. I mean the USSR. The USSR didn't agree, with the deal of Bretton Woods. Okay, and that's why the USSR, their economy caught hell, because they wasn't, in the they wasn't in the clique. Okay, and when the USSR fell, you had these different oligarchs rise to power, and began to run, okay, Russia, like on some black market type, But then when you had Vladimir Putin come in, Putin began to regulate a lot of those oligarchs, man. Strengthen the military. Why? Because Russia played a major part in end time prophecy, man. Okay, like when Putin came in, um he transformed, okay, Russia, because Russia was in a bad state. It was pretty much like a open, country for corruption on a whole nother level. So Putin did come in and clean up some things. All right. Now, the complete background of the details of this and that, but just on the surface, Putin did come in and clean up a lot of things that was going on. All right, within Russia after the fall of the USSR. But it's interesting that the USSR didn't ratify their Bretton Woods agreements, and that explains why, Russia gets a lot of stepchild treatment as well. Okay, But Russia is, prep for this new world order, So, was there anything else? Let's see. Did I have another video? It might have been it. Let's play this real quick. Let's segue. All right. Because you got this going on. Because these devils, they got to push, they got to push civil unrest, and then you have a authentic uprising because there's people that's pissed about these data centers, man. There's people pissed about these data centers, about the AI taking the jobs, about, not being able to afford a livable wage. Okay. So we're going to see, more riotous behavior. People are already on edge, man, and that these gas prices continue to go up, because they're going to continue to go up because it's a new era. The Strait of Hormuz is never going back to what it was before February 28th, which is being a open, all right, sea, a free market where energy just flowed, freely through the Strait of Hormuz. It's never going back to that. Okay. Iran is not going to relinquish power, okay, to be able to, to charge a fee coming through that strait, and that fee has to be paid in other currency outside the dollar, man. Okay. So that's going to continue to weaken the dollar, which the elites want that. Okay. And it's going to continue to cause more unrest because life is going to become more and more unaffordable here in America, man. Okay. Plus, false flag events that they can push. All right. Cyber attacks that they can push, to take this thing into another phase, man. Okay. But we're seeing a different atmosphere in America, man. So let's play this.
A wave of attacks. So I don't know if you guys have been noticing this, but there has been a wave of attacks against ruling class elites. And it's been like rapidly increasing by the day. So it's happening, man. Workers are erupting across this country. Warehouses are burning. Billionaires are being targeted. So as JP Hill says here, warehouses burnt down, a Molotov cocktail thrown at Sam Altman's house, a politician's home shot at because they supported a data center, a spree of attacks on the ruling class appears to have begun. Every attacker will now be deemed a terrorist by our government and by the entire ruling class. That's inevitable. But what the ruling class desperately does...
If a brother can post that, how their actions shall stand in their own hand, 2nd Ezra 15, because while you have these nations, beginning to fight over these resources, okay, we're going to have domestic, civil unrest, okay, and they're going to cause more and more civil unrest to create desperation because they need order out of chaos, man. So whether these things are authentic, okay, or whether these things are staged, dealing with the attack, Sam Altman house with Sam Altman, that's the Edomite from OpenAI, where you get Chat GPT, which he's a small hat, okay, and he's just set up, by the elites to be the logo of certain technology, okay. But I would say, this incident where someone shot at a politician, okay, because they approved the data center, and I can see that being authentic. Okay, because they've been pissed about these data centers, man. These data centers have been a nightmare, to these residential areas. Grok in Memphis has been a nightmare to those people, man. Okay, so let's play this a little more.
I want you to know is that they made this moment inevitable. Their greed has made so many people so destitute and desperate that people across America resorting to lashing out was bound to happen. What the rich and powerful don't want is for you to look at the underlying causes of these acts. And here's an image of one of the warehouses that was set on fire. And so when people looked at Luigi and some people were shocked by the reaction of people basically being like kind of sympathetic to Luigi. That was a harbinger of things to come. That was a warning. This is not an isolated incident, and this is not an isolated reaction among a group of deranged individuals. This is like everybody I know has a horror story when it comes to dealing with health insurance companies in this country. Every single person I know. And so, yeah, the reaction was, well, the guy who Luigi killed is a criminal, and he's got the blood of thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of innocent people on his hands, because his, United Healthcare was like objectively one of the worst in terms of their rejection rates for claims. And so everybody's reaction was like, well, it's kind of nuanced, right? Because the guy who was killed is a criminal and was directly involved in basically the deaths of a lot of innocent people. And like, yeah, Luigi killed the guy, but I mean, it's a dirty business, right? You're involved in a business where you have blood on your hands, so people didn't like feel all that horrible for this guy getting killed by Luigi. And that should have been a wake-up call to everybody. And in fact, for a little bit it was. In fact, what happened was, in the wake of that, every single insurance company, health insurance company, like immediately started approving all the different claims like overnight. There was like a long streak of like just approve everything. Why? Because they didn't want to end up like the executive who got killed. They didn't want to end up like that. And so, but that was just the beginning, because this country is just squeezing people more and more and more and more. And now we're at the point where you burn down a warehouse and, one of the people said something like, all you had to do was pay us a living wage. And then that was then echoing around online endlessly. There's another example here that I wanted to share with you. Take a look. Sam Altman's home targeted in second attack. Early Sunday morning, a car stopped and appears to have fired a gun at the Russian Hill home of OpenAI's CEO, according to a newly obtained police report. So it's a workers' revolt. It's an anti-Epstein class revolt. And it's also anti-AI too, because what they're doing is they're coming out and they're promising like, oh yeah, the whole point of this is to replace workers. The far-right white nationalist conspiracy is like, the immigrants are coming to replace you. They're coming to steal your jobs. And it's like, no, you idiots. The only thing actually coming to steal your job is AI. And the billionaires are telling you, yes, we're going to make it so your job doesn't exist anymore, and some machine is going to do it. And it's not like we're going to, make sure you can survive in that system. We're just going to throw you to the wolves and say, fuck off and die, right? Let's cut the social safety net. Let's not pay people, from the fruit of the work of the machines that do the work, the fruit of the labor that the machines do. No, they're saying, go fuck yourself and die. And they're open about this. They say these things, and people are like waking up to this and freaking out. Also, when you build the data centers, they're incredibly loud to the point where it drives people fucking crazy. There's all sorts of emissions which get people sick. The Grok data center in I believe it's Memphis has left like a bunch of people very sick as a result of the emissions that are coming out of the data center. So like there's all these health issues, there's all these environmental issues, and then there's also the energy problem, which is like, we have a limited amount of energy and we're going to use it building this shit. You're going to have like rolling blackouts at people's homes, but you're going to have the fucking data center soaking up all the energy. It makes you blow through fresh water as well, because they need fresh water to cool off the data centers. So look, it's all coming to a head now. It's all coming to a head. And guess what? So this story came out about Sam.
Yeah, it's all coming to a head, and this is all prophecy, man. So as we see, these nations, fighting, for a seat at the table of this new world order, okay, we're going to see, civil unrest increase as well. So this is a beautiful time, man, and the Lord, has this place running to his end, and it's beautiful to see. Okay, so let's go here, because all prophecy is tied in together, man. So we're seeing all these things happen at the same time, and it's all connected. Okay, it said this is the book of 2nd Ezra 15 and 14 is that woe to the world and them that dwell therein, which is destruction, man. All right, because it's going to be happening on every level, man. A war, like people talk about the draft. Well, the draft is just one part of the Lord's judgment. If you get drafted, they'll just your lot to get drafted, okay? But there's much more that's going to be happening beyond being drafted, because pretty soon America is going to be the worst place to be, okay? We're coming to a time where America is going to be the absolute worst place to be, man. It said, for the sword in their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands, which is weaponry, man. Okay, so things are just going to get more hostile, especially as these prices go up, because the price of gas, all right, is linked to the price of food. You're going to have people losing, businesses, Okay, unemployment gonna go crazy, food scarcity and security is gonna go crazy. Okay, and there's no telling what event that these devils, okay, are gonna pull off. All right, to take this thing to another notch, man. They've already telegraphed, Iranian drone strikes, Iranian cyber attacks. Okay, and then they already showed who they was gonna get ready to blame it on, man. Okay, they had the with a property of Allah, hoodie, in the so-called shooting. Okay, so this devil is showing his hand, and he don't got many cards left, man. Okay, so this devil just after a while, he just gonna have to throw his cards on the table and wild out, man. you know, he saw he finna shoot up the poker game, man. you see, he said, "For there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, man." And these sellout politicians that's within reach of these civilians, man, they gonna start getting active with these politicians, man. Especially about these data centers, man, because them data centers, man, they bring in all that noise, okay, all the noise it takes to build them, okay. Then once they get them built, people are having seizures, people crops are suffering, okay. The water becomes, the water pressure becomes low. People talk about the water pressure, their energy bill. Okay, people are getting ready to lose it, man. People are already on edge. Okay, it says a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able, man. And you're gonna have martial law, and then this devil could, cut the pumps off, man. And blame it on the energy crisis, man. So there's a lot of ways that this devil can go, to thrust this thing into a whole another phase, man. Okay, it's said, "For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, and the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid, and many shall." It says, "And man shall not pity, Shlaki, and man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy the houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread, and for great tribulation." Okay, so we're coming to a time of a lack of bread, okay, which is famine and great tribulation. Okay, so things are going to gradually get worse, man. And the way that the Lord, is speeding things up, man, don't be surprised if something major happens and kicks this thing into a whole nother gear. Okay, it says, "Behold, said the Most High, I will call together all the kings of the earth to reverence me, which are from the rising of the sun." So the Lord is summoning all these nations to a particular region to go to war. Okay, it said from the rising of the sun, which is in the east, from the south, from the east, and from Lebanon, which is in the north, to turn themselves one against another and repay the things that they have done, all right, to them. So the Lord is calling these nations to go to war, all right, and this is a punishment to all these nations for what they've done to the Lord's people, man. Okay, it says, "Like as they do yet this day until my chosen, the remnant, so will I do also, and recompense in their bosom, thus saith the Lord power," man. So all this judgment, is a recompense from the Lord. Okay, whether it's domestically, all right, whether it's internationally, all right. So whether it's these nations fighting for energy, okay, or these locals, okay, fighting, all right, for groceries, well, it's all judgment from on high, man. Because of what they've done to his chosen. You see? So yeah, I'll leave it there. You know, I'll leave it there. I'll you brothers, all right, and you sisters have been edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shah Bahashem Makakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutations to the whole elect Shalom.